Okay. Good morning. Morning, everybody. So my name's Emily. I'm really happy to see you all and to start this Monday morning with some information, education that I feel really passionate about. I'm concerned. I will say that entrepreneurship, whether starting a business from scratch, acquiring an existing business, or starting a franchise, I think it is a fantastic opportunity if it's the right vehicle or platform for you reaching your goals. And at the same time, I am very concerned about people making decisions based on lack of information, misinformation. There's so much information available to us on Google, right? So while we have access to so much information, I want to make sure that everything is based in fact, right? So that's something I'm really passionate about. And so we've put together these educational workshops just to help get you pointed in the right direction. And I will say this, I don't know if I knew it was going to happen. There we go. I don't know if entrepreneurship is the right direction for you. I'm not here to promote any one path over another path. I am here to help you access information so that you can decide what path makes the most sense for you. So I recognize, thank you everybody for being here on time. And so many people were here early. I respect your time and your energy and the fact that you're spending some of that with me this morning. So before we jump into the content, I would like to hear from you guys in order for this next 60 to 90 minutes to be time well spent for you. I'm going to get something to write with. Do you have any questions or anything that you want to be sure that we get addressed? I'm going to unmute everybody here. And feel free to shout it out if there's anything you're like, I'm wondering about this, or I'm looking into buying this, or...
There I am.
Oh, hi, Teresa.
Okay, I got the video working.
Great. Any questions or anything that you guys want to be sure that we get to today?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, tell you what I'm going to do is, because we've got a lot of content to cover, what I'm going to do is this. I am going to mute the lines once we get into the content, just in case there's any background noise. And if questions come up during this educational portion, please type them into the chat box. As I had mentioned in my email this morning, we have about an hour of content. And so if we wrap up in an hour and everybody's happy, great. If you'd like to stick around and ask questions, I'm here to help. Sound good? Mm-hmm. All right. So let's mute everybody. I'm going to share my screen here. And also this is being recorded, so you are welcome to take notes. You are also welcome to just sit back, relax, take it all in as you're comfortable. All right, are you guys able to see my screen? All right, excellent. So, as I mentioned before, my name's Emily Anderson. I like to be really transparent. This is the lens through which I view entrepreneurship. I'm a third generation entrepreneur. Here's a fun fact. My grandpa was the catcher for the Portland Beavers many years ago. And when he was done with his baseball career, he started a business. He opened a bar in downtown Portland. My father was an entrepreneur. When he was about 25 years old, he built a fence for someone. Let's see, my dad is, 75 now? Okay, so 50 years ago, my dad built a fence for somebody. He actually lost $500 on his first job. So I don't even know what $500 would look like today. But he lost $500 on his first job, but you know what? It was an excellent learning opportunity. He started a fencing business. He later was a lumber broker. He had a very successful business in Tigard, right on Pacific Highway, and he sold that when he was around age 55. I had a stay-at-home mom, so I got to kind of see the world through that lens, if you will. I had my own small business. I had that for about 4 years. I got to the point with that where it was time to either scale or bail. I didn't have a blueprint for scaling the business. I didn't have the guidance and the support that I needed, so I decided to bail. And I spent a really exciting 6 months in the Silicon Valley working for a startup. Super exciting until the venture capitalists pulled their funding and the rug was swept out from under many of us. I've done corporate. I've worked for small family-owned businesses, and I have been in the franchise industry for about the last 7 years. Here's what we're going to talk about today. Absolutely, guys, there is an elephant in the room, and we're going to talk about that. Obviously, I'm not an expert on COVID, but I am happy to share all the information and the insights that I can, as that is or might influence at least researching businesses and what we've learned from the past. We're going to talk about why business ownership, different options. There are phenomenal rewards in business ownership, but there are also some significant risks. So let's know the risks and let's know how to mitigate those risks. We're going to talk about myths and realities of franchising. Honestly, franchising has its own little section here. The reason being, I think franchise ownership is the most misunderstood and overlooked of 3 different entrepreneurial paths. So we're going to spend a little time talking about that. How to identify the best business option for you and building your personal business model. Here's what I can say about building your personal business model is the way we look for a job is very, very different than the way we look for a business. And since so many people that look for businesses are in career transition, I want to make sure that we are able to see that we need to apply a different approach if we're job searching and business searching at the same time, which many, many people do. They take a different approach. It's a slightly different beast. So we're going to wrap up with that. Who is FranNet? You guys, FranNet's an organization. We've been around for 32 years. We provide free education, resources, training, strategic partnerships with, for example, the Small Business Development Center and SCORE. Those are 2 fantastic resources, regardless of whatever entrepreneurial path you choose. The SCORE and the SBDC, Small Business Development Center, are arms of the Small Business Administration, and they provide you with free business advising. Your tax dollars pay these organizations or fund these organizations. So be sure to use them as a resource as well. And I'm just going to stop talking about Fran. Okay, a little bit more about FranNet is here's what we do is we thoroughly screen boutique franchise concepts. We support their development, and we thoroughly screen candidates that might be interested in the franchise industry. So I'm kind of like a matchmaker, if you will. I don't sell anything. I'm here to educate and advise. Really, I think of myself as an advocate, if you will. So this is not our first rodeo. And forgive me if that sounds insensitive, but we are in very uncertain times as it relates to the economy. And we've seen this before. We saw the dot-com bust, 9/11, saw the Great Recession. This time we're looking at COVID-19. And where we consistently see business owners achieving success, very subjective term, which we'll get to, but let's just say success, is these are some consistent characteristics that people tend to focus on during these uncertain times as it relates to a business. Recession resistant. Right now, I would say recession resistant is a larger category. Right now, the catchphrase is essential services, right? Low cost, low overhead, service-based businesses. Now we're going to talk about other options, but this tends to be where people focus when we're looking at an uncertain economy. So how can you use this time during this time of uncertainty? Well, this is where I see people that are currently researching business ownership, this is where I kind of see people landing in one of these three buckets. Some people are hitting the brakes, and I get it. I mean, I personally have a client that was, oh my gosh, like 95% done with their research and a 95% yes. And then when COVID hit, they said, nope, we're going to hit the brakes. We're going to wait about 6 months. This isn't for everybody. I get it. What most of my clients are doing is they're kind of tapping on the brakes. They're saying, I'm going to keep moving forward. I'm going to use this time to conduct extra due diligence. And that way I'm going to be completely informed. And when I am ready to say yes, when I am ready to say go, I will be prepared. I just need a little bit more clarity on how this COVID situation is going to play out. Now, the question that I'm going to ask you is, and if you think you fall into this bucket, is what does clarity around the COVID situation look like? So, for example, if clarity for you means we need to be 12 to 18 months completely on the other side of this for me to explore entrepreneurship, I respect that, but now might not be the time to start your research, right? So is your idea of clarity and what information you need in order to move forward, is it really realistic in terms of a time frame? And lastly, what we see is some people just moving full speed ahead. There are some people that are saying this is the opportune time. Rates are low. There's going to be more vacancies, right? If we're looking at a location-based business, there is possibly a huge economic opportunity on the other side of this to serve pent-up demand. So what some people are doing is, I am like the racehorse and I'm in the gate. And when I say I'm ready to run, I'm in charge and I'm in control, and I'll pull the trigger when I'm ready. It's not that any one of these is right, wrong, good, or bad. It's really about, this is how you can use this time. And remember that conducting research, learning, is not the same thing as committing to a purchase. Research, it will cost time. It will cost time. It will cost energy, but it doesn't necessarily have to cost you a dime. Not until you are ready. All right. As far as financing, these are three different financing organizations that I personally have worked with for years. Fantastic organizations that have helped many, many, many clients. Things are changing so quickly these days with financing that I invite you to maybe jot these down or refer back to this slide when you get the recording. You can go to their websites. As a matter of fact, I'm going to make a note because next week on the 20th, we are hosting a 30-minute info session on how to finance a business, franchise, or startup that Benetrends is going to be hosting. And I'll email everybody that link if you'd like to register. The nice thing about that is you are going to be getting the latest, the greatest, the most up-to-date information and strategies on financing as it relates to SBA loans, rollover for business startup, etc. And lastly, I want you to know that even if you are new to entrepreneurship, you are completely in charge and you are completely in control and you have rights and you are entirely empowered to make these big decisions. FranNet's the only organization that has put in writing that we are completely committed to serving your best interest, even if that means saying no to business ownership. So I invite you to take a step back, maybe even take a big breath in. Because we don't really get to use our imagination very often as adults. And I invite you to imagine that you're the owner of a successful business. And how would your life be better? A lot of people say, oh, I'd love to own a business, but very, very, very few even take as much action as to attend an online training like what you're doing today. So you've already differentiated yourself. How would your life be better? And these are some common answers. Success. Now, success is a very important and yet a very subjective term. What does success look like for you? Does that look like more personal fulfillment, flexibility, independence? I like to use the word autonomy. the ability to be self-directed in your career, in your life? Does success look like more control and security, not vulnerable to layoffs, more financial security? So what is it for you? And each of you is going to have a different answer to this than the next person. But what's important is, why are we even considering business ownership? I mean, so many of us maybe got a college education and were essentially educated and trained to go work for someone else, yet here we are, right? Many people say they want to own a business, but many people, most of them, go decide to work for someone else. And why is that? Well, these are some common responses and common concerns, and each of them very, very valid. Common concern is risk. Sometimes it feels like a job is safer. Money. A business costs a lot of money to start and to run. How much money? Do I have enough money, right? Knowledge. Some people just say, I don't know where to start. I don't know what to do. And so I'll just go back to what's familiar. And then there's the skill set that, frankly, running a business takes specific talents and skills. How do I know if I have those skills or not? So let's break this down. This is the risk reality, if we are talking about a job. Some people say, or in the past, people have said a job is safer. Well, for those of us, I would say age 40, 45 and up, I would say people, 40, 45 and up, probably we started our career at a point where there was corporate loyalty, where there was an opportunity to work your way up the corporate ladder. And at one point in time, the longer you held a job, the more secure it became. And there was a sense of loyalty, right? And that has changed. As a matter of fact, these days, the longer you have a position, the less secure it becomes. Right? I talk to more and more people, especially people with like an engineering background, that have been so efficient that they've worked themselves right out of a job. So some of us are still playing by those old rules, but the rules are changing. Jobs are still a great way to earn a living and get fulfillment. However, job tenure keeps shortening. So even if we wanted to work up the corporate ladder, the C-suite, CEOs, CIOs, COOs, on the average tenure for those positions is 2.67 years. And the higher up the corporate ladder we get, which often parallels the older we get, once we are laid off, we tend to fall under what's considered long-term unemployment. The AARP put a study together, and they shared this, they published it, I think, last year, that on average, I think it's professionals over the age of 56 tend to fall into long-term unemployment, which is like 12 to 18 months or longer. So now job security isn't really what we're looking for anymore, because it doesn't exist. Income security is really what many people are trying to create. And we want to mitigate the risk. So there are certain business characteristics that tend to do well in just about any economy. So think about this. Professionals still need training. People still want quality education for their kids. Yeah, even when the schools close. Homeowners reinvest in their homes. Businesses still need offices maintained. There is a franchise. I was telling some of you who logged in earlier, there is a franchise. I had one-on-ones with like 44 different franchise models about last month. And there's one franchise that is setting record numbers. And one of the things they do is they do B2B cleaning, commercial cleaning. And currently they're in offices all over the place, disinfecting, defogging, cleaning these offices. And their numbers are off the charts. Also, employers outsource and use personnel companies rather than committing to new hires. So just some things to think about, that many businesses can thrive in just about any economic condition. So when we pursue business ownership options, 3 options to consider. Excuse me. We can start a business from scratch. We can buy an existing business. We can start a franchise. There's advantages and disadvantages to all of these. Again, I don't advocate one over the other, but let's unpack all 3 of these. And what might happen is you might say, okay, that looks like the next best step for me, or that's one that I definitely don't want to pursue. So let's take a look. Starting a business from scratch. As a business owner, you have total control. You get to decide on everything. There's room for creativity, your ideas, innovation. There's no rules. There's a huge upside on the other side of this. And if you have a passion about something, you can build a business around your passion. Now, on the downside, not only do you get to do everything, but you have to do everything, right? So I meet a lot of professionals that once they leave corporate, they would like to start a consulting practice. They have expertise and knowledge and experience in a certain area, we'll say. So they start a consulting practice, but what they realize is they also need to do all their own marketing, prospecting, and billing, and booking, and scheduling, and create systems, communications. And they end up spending so much time doing that they don't get to spend as much time doing what it was that they love, which was consulting and problem solving. Another disadvantage is there are limited financial options. If you go to a bank and say, I've got a business idea, it's much harder to get funding and financing. Starting a business from scratch tends to have a slower ramp up and the highest failure rate. Another option would be to buy an existing business. And if there's some websites that if you're looking to buy an existing business, a couple of websites would be bizbuysell.com. So bizbuysell, bizbuysell.com. You could also check out bizquest.com, bizquest.com. So these are some sites that list local businesses for sale. And there are definitely some advantages to buying an existing business. For one, it's very likely that you can have immediate cash flow. And for some of us pursuing entrepreneurship, we might need immediate cash flow for it to be an option for us in the first place. Goodwill, you might be able to access just an amazing opportunity that maybe if someone is selling for all the right reasons and they're looking for someone just like you to take over. You get to look at the actual financial results. I think that can be very psychologically reassuring to be able to look at the books. You can share the books with lenders. It makes it much more attractive to getting financing. There's an established market, established customers, established employees. There might be systems already in place. So those same systems that we were saying you would get to / have to create if you were starting a brand new business, those might already be in place in an acquisition, and there might be some financing from the owner. Now, some disadvantages. Okay, so how can cash flow be an advantage and a disadvantage? So I'm a really trusting person. I just am. I just believe that people are inherently good and I trust them. I also think that when it comes to money, it can bring up fear in some of us and doesn't always bring out the best in humans, right? So what is the actual cash flow of the business? And what is the current owner running through the business? April 15th is right around the corner, and business owners can get really, really creative around that kind of time. A lot of these laws were really written in the best interest of business owners and not employees. So what is the actual cash flow of the business? Why are they really selling? So a statistic that was shared with me is that 2 out of every 3 small businesses, and this includes franchises. Franchises are small businesses, locally owned. 2 out of 3 are sold to a family member, an employee, or a friend. And we never knew the transaction even took place. We were never eligible or in the running. So when we do look at those websites, let's say, statistically, those are the small businesses where they're the 1 out of 3 where an employee, a family member, or a friend didn't want to buy the business. And that could be for very legitimate reasons. But even someone as trusting as I can't help but kind of raise an eyebrow and say, well, why didn't anybody else in the know want to buy this business? What do they know that I don't know? And how can I know? I don't know. If we don't know what the actual cash flow of the business is, what the earnings are, how do we know what it's worth? So businesses tend to sell for a multiple. If we don't know what the actual cash flow is, we don't know what the business is actually worth. It may be overpriced. especially if this is the business that someone created from the ground up. So I mentioned earlier that my father was a small business owner. I don't know what he sold his business for, but one thing I'm guessing is that when my dad sold that lumber brokerage, that was his baby, right? So how do you put a price tag on something that is so where someone is so emotionally invested? If you're buying somebody else's baby, it might be overpriced. There might be poor training and support available to you. Again, hidden seller motives. We don't know why they're really selling. We don't know if the employees are going to stick around. I would also add that we don't know if the customers are going to stick around under new ownership. And there tends to be a higher debt service. All right, so let's talk about the advantages and disadvantages of buying a franchise. Now, I'm sure there's a lot of things on this list that you already know, but there's a few things that might surprise you. So advantages, you get the name recognition, the licensed trademark, you get a proven business system. It drives me crazy that the word franchise sounds so much like French fries, because usually we hear the word franchise and we think of fast food. But franchises are not fast food. They are business systems that have been replicated and executed by many people in many different areas. Franchises provide training and support. How much training and how much support? Well, when you conduct thorough due diligence, you'll know exactly how much and if it's enough for you. Franchises tend to have a lower failure rate, lower overall cost when you look at the big picture, more financing options. And the two things that most people aren't necessarily, it's just not on people's radar, is the franchising is regulated by the Federal Trade Commission. And what it means in this highly regulated industry is there's actually a high degree of transparency and information. It's just that most people either don't know where to access the information or what to do with it when they get it. An example of this information is the disclosure, a franchise disclosure document, which each franchise is mandated to provide to you by law. And I'm going to break down exactly what information is in this franchise disclosure document that can be a few hundred pages thick. So we'll put that on pause for a second. And then we're going to talk about the franchise family. And 7 years ago, when I started working in this industry, I thought the term franchise family was absolutely cheesy. Here's what I can tell you. So let me give an example. Okay, FranNet is a franchise. And I work in parallel with about 100 other FranNet franchisees across the country, that they are running the same business that I'm running. And we're not in competition with each other, but we get to learn from one another, share our challenges, share our successes, share best practices, if you will. But also over time, this creates an enormous level of trust. I don't know if, hopefully have you ever had the experience where you get to work with a like-minded professional? That's what it's like in a franchise. Example is that one of my FranNet franchisees, she was diagnosed with cancer last year and understandably needed to take some time off, had many surgeries, et cetera. Well, I know how to successfully run her business. There's about 100 of us across the country that know how to successfully run her business. And we were gladly able to step in and support her so that while she took care of herself and her health and her family, she didn't need to worry about her business. And today she's in remission. She's doing very, very well. And she's, her business is going strong. She and her business her income did not take a hit because she had that franchise family where we had her back. And if the tables were turned, I know she'd have my back. And I am not aware of any other entrepreneurial path that has that kind of support. Now, there are some disadvantages to buying a franchise. If you have a really unique business idea, it may not be available in a franchise model. Just simply, there are fewer industry options. Many have structured operating systems. So if you like to use QuickBooks, and let's say FranNet franchisees all use a different operating system, as part of that franchise, you would likely need to use the same operating system as everybody else. There are territory restrictions with franchising, not with all, but with most. And I consider territory restrictions kind of a good news, bad news. So the good news about having a defined territory is you get to rely on everybody else's experience that it would take perhaps a certain population density or a certain mile radius to sufficiently support one business location. And if you're awarded that business territory and you acquire it, then the franchisor is not going to put in any competition in that territory. The downside is, for example, if you live in Southwest Portland, somebody else may have already acquired that area and you might need to make a hard decision. Do you move forward with that particular franchise brand, even if it means maybe going over on the east side? Or do you abandon that brand and only look for a brand that's available in your ideal territory? I recommend with starting, before you look for the brand, look for the territory, the region, the customer base that you want to serve, and then see what's available there. That's my 2 cents. Also with a franchise, you can only sell their products. So during times like this, if your sister-in-law is very kind and generous and making masks, she might want you to sell them at your business. It might not be okay with the franchisor. Also, there are ongoing royalty payments. And frankly, some people are completely fine with paying royalties. A lot of people really put up a wall. I get it. Like, well, why would I pay royalties if I can do this myself? I get it. So royalties are a trade-off, and I'll kind of unpack that here in a little bit, but there are ongoing royalty payments with a franchise. So essentially a franchise is a trade-off. You get a license to use, I call it the winning playbook. The winning playbook. So if someone were to start, I don't know, maybe this is a bad example because I'm not a complete sports fan, but let's say a NFL team was brought to Portland, right? You're going to start this NFL team. Would you be willing to invest a one-time fee to access the winning playbook of, last year's Super Bowl winners? Maybe. So you get the winning playbook in exchange for a one-time franchise fee and ongoing royalties. So franchise is essentially, it's a distribution channel where you build that distribution channel quickly and you get to obtain market dominance quickly with the support of the franchise headquarters, you as the franchisee or the franchise operator, and the customer base. So I promised I'd unpack the FDD, the franchise disclosure document. Here's what you can expect to get after, like, really early on in your research process. What are the obligations for you know what, let me go back for a second. Did I skip a slide? No, I didn't. Here we go. Obligations for the franchisor and franchisees. How do they define a territory? So is a certain mile radius, is it a population density? And FDD includes the listing and contact information for everyone who currently is or ever has been a business owner in that particular model. About 30% of 30% of FDDs have an earnings claim. So they update the FDDs every year, every spring. So right now they're getting updated. And I would say in the next month or two, you would be able to access a general earnings claim of how franchisees did in 2019. We always look back at that previous year. It might be broken down by top quartile, bottom quartile. It might be broken down by different margins, et cetera. But you get some insight into the numbers of the franchisees. You get to look at the financial statements, policy, renewal, termination, transfer policies. So most franchise agreements are good for about 10 years. And then if at the end of 10 years, if you want to renew, there might be a fee. If you want to terminate or if you want to transfer it and sell to somebody else, there might be a fee. But this is all going to be information you have well ahead of time. So you'll notice I just highlighted the listing and contact information for current and past franchisees. The most important part of researching a franchise is where we actually contact and speak with these franchisees. So the research of a franchise is usually the first, you have a couple of conversations with someone with the franchisor, and I kind of look at it as a first date where everybody has their best face forward. We're kind of hoping we're going to like each other, right? And Then if we like what we're learning so far, let's say the franchisor says, oh, we provide fantastic training and we're really responsive. And, and they'll say all this stuff with their best face forward. Well, let's take what they say and let's go talk to the franchisees and say, what kind of training did you get from the parent company? Did you feel adequately, informed and ready to start when you opened your doors? I am looking to replace a 6-figure corporate salary. Do you think I could do that in this model in year 1, year 2, year 3, right? Did you have any headaches with employees or hiring? So you can ask them anything you want. The current and past franchisees have really no interest as to whether or not you acquire this business or not. They are very detached and they were once in your shoes. If you're looking to create a sellable asset, talk to past franchisees and ask them, how long did your business sit on the market? What kind of multiple did you get for it? Who did you sell it to? So this is all information you can have. Essentially what we're trying to do is increase information that will increase predictability and decrease the risk. They'll let you know what it's really like. And that level of transparency and candor is just not available in any of the other entrepreneurial paths. So some trends that we've seen in franchising, light manufacturing. So this is any business where you are creating a raw, tangible product on site. A great example would be sign and graphics business, like a B2B sign and graphics business. When you think of, so every time I point out this business, it's like we can't help but see signs everywhere. Next time you go to Fred Meyer, you walk by a Verizon store. Next time there is a holiday, there will be signs everywhere. Happy spring, happy Easter, happy 4th of July, it's back to school, happy holidays, happy New Year, right? There are signs, promotions everywhere, and they are constantly changing. Small business support is a huge trend. So, Portland has a phenomenal just the Portland market is so supportive of other small businesses, but many small businesses don't have their own in-house IT department or marketing department. So a small business that supports other small businesses tends to do really well in just about any economy. Senior care and support services. Got 8,000 to 10,000 people turning 65 every day. Common misconception with senior care businesses is some people assume that you as the owner are essentially holding hands with the seniors all day, every day, and that's not the case. There are some senior care businesses where you're interacting with seniors, but there are some where you're actually managing the employees and the caregivers, and you're never having direct contact with the seniors. So it really depends on what may or may not sound good to you. Master franchise is a unique model where you get to be kind of a mini franchisor for a very large territory, maybe perhaps for the state of Oregon. It is a great opportunity for those, if you really think like an empire builder, if you are looking to create a legacy and maybe pass it down from multiple generations, we might want to talk about master franchising. Home improvement, windows, doors, mold removal. Gosh, you guys, this is kind of embarrassing. I had 3 homeowners insurance claims within 18 months due to broken pipes and the previous homeowner trying to fix it himself. So anyway, home improvement, damage restoration. The good news about all the damage to my house is that my homeowner's insurance paid for everything, right? And I don't care what's happening in the economy. When my basement floods like that, I'm going to get it taken care of. And lastly, I want to talk about semi-absentee ownership. I would say half maybe of my placements over the last few years have fallen into semi-absentee ownership, and the general public just doesn't seem aware that this even exists. This is more of an investment, and it's semi-absentee because this is a business where the time and energy demands on the owner are part-time, essentially. So some characteristics about semi-absentee businesses. And again, if you're out and about, you might start to look at businesses and start to see them a different way. Like, oh, I wonder if that's a semi-absentee business. These are businesses that are usually a location-based business. that is run by a manager. And the manager manages the employees, and you as the owner are really managing the business, or you're managing the manager, and you're running the business remotely. So that'll be several hours every week where you might be just making sure that the manager is executing the marketing systems correctly. You're overseeing the P&L. It's very common to own multiple locations. It's very, very scalable. And you're essentially managing the managers. This is a great opportunity for someone who, a couple of things. One, if you are looking for a job and you would like to quietly start a business simultaneously, this is a great opportunity. It creates an additional revenue stream. It's a great opportunity if someone is looking for semi-retirement. Like, I'd still love to work 10, 20 hours a week, but on my terms. Another great opportunity for that. When the jobs kind of come and go, semi-absentee ownership tends to have a more consistent trajectory in terms of earnings. So great example, I'll give you an example, would be Great Clips. So Great Clips is a semi-absentee business. The owner is rarely in the store. The owner is never cutting hair. The owner is managing the managers remotely and just making sure everything is being executed according to plan. Let's talk about some myths. Some people think that franchising is only fast food and retail. Absolutely not. Franchise just sounds like French fries. There are thousands of different companies, right? Hundreds of thousands of operating units. Some people think that franchises succeed because of the quality of the product. Really? Can you make a hamburger better than McDonald's? Frankly, I'm guessing you can. So if it's not the quality of the product, what is it? It's the system. It's the marketing, sales, operations, and accounting systems that are something that can be replicated and executed by multiple people. Some people think that franchises are successful because they don't have any competition. That's absolutely not true. Competition is great. Competition shows that there is demand. What franchising does is it provides consolidation. Consolidation. It's the system, right? So let's pause here. Common myth is that franchises are expensive. Now, expensive is another very subjective term. So let's look at some actual numbers. About 2/3 of franchises have a total investment of $250,000 and under. Now, that doesn't mean you need to have $250,000. That means that might be the total investment. And frankly, one of the first things we do before we start any research is to see, well, what can we realistically and responsibly invest? And then let's see what is the best option within our investment range. What franchisors are usually looking for is someone who can access about 25 to 30% of the total investment with a cash injection, and then finance the rest. So you might be surprised where some people are accessing that 25 to 30%. Some people have it in a savings account, maybe a family, friend, investing partner. Some clients that are using a HELOC and using a home equity line of credit. There might be some seller financing involved with a resale. The way most of my clients access the liquidity, I am not a financial advisor, and I'm not suggesting that you do this. I'm just saying that this is something that you may not be aware of, is that you can use a portion of your retirement toward the acquisition of a business without paying any taxes or penalties. I'm not talking about cashing out your retirement. I am not talking about using all of your retirement. But if you have, let's say, if most of your net worth is in your retirement, let's say you have $400,000 in retirement, would it make sense to diversify and take 30 to 50,000 of that retirement and move it over into another entity that would be the cash injection to start a franchise model for you? Actually, it's not specific to franchising. You could do that with a business acquisition as well. They're really going to unpack this on that financing webinar that I mentioned. So I'll be sure to provide you with that link. And just know that you have options. Another common myth is that high return requires a high investment, and that is absolutely not true. If anything, those low overhead, low cost businesses that I mentioned at the very beginning, where I talked about where a lot of people are focusing during these uncertain times, those low cost, low overhead service-based businesses often have the highest margins. So money in does not equal money out. It's really about what can you responsibly and realistically invest, and what's the best business for you that's you can get into as cheaply as possible. Also, industry experience is not required. Now, this is a little tricky. So if I had 30 years of experience in IT, let's say, and I was laid off and I'm thinking about starting or buying a business on my own, when I asked myself, yeah, I would probably focus on a business where I had industry experience. That makes sense. It doesn't apply in franchising. If anything, franchisors usually don't want someone with industry experience getting into their franchise. So an example would be a staffing business. The staffing franchisors that I work with do not want someone with HR experience. Now, why is that? The franchisors want someone with good business sense, communication skills, maybe management experience. They can teach you the system. What they need from you is someone who can maybe run a team, manage a project, provide great leadership, oversee the marketing, ensure that the P&L is spick and span, right? Also, another thing about entering a business where you have industry experience is you are vulnerable to thinking and acting like an employee instead of thinking and acting like a business owner. So the franchisors are looking for transferable skills, not industry specific skills. So, nobody woke up one morning and said, I want to own a franchise. Like nobody said that. However, I know a lot of people that say, I would like more autonomy. I would like more control over my income. I would say that the most common phrase that I hear from my clients, they say, I want to control my own destiny. So a franchise is a vehicle for helping you reach your long-term goals. And it's one of many entrepreneurial paths that frankly tends to have a lower amount of risk and a higher amount of support. Now, I told you we were going to get into royalties. And if the idea of paying royalties leaves a bad taste in your mouth, I get it. But I'm a stickler for fact. So one thing that the most people aren't aware of as it relates to royalties is with a good franchise brand, a good franchise system, is a franchisor is usually going to lose money on you when you're a new franchisee. They're going to go in the red because their support costs for you are very high for onboarding, training, getting you, you might be traveling for training. They are going to put all kinds of support to help you get up and running. I mean, what's that analogy with like a jet or an airplane that most of its energy comes when it's just like right at takeoff? So they're going to be supporting your takeoff when your royalties are really low or frankly non-existent, because they have thoroughly screened you. If this is a good franchisor, they have thoroughly screened you, and they believe that in the long term, when their support costs go down, you and they are going to make money in the long term. Their support costs go down, your royalty payments go up. You and them are going to earn more in the long run. That's why we pay royalties. It's exchanging some profits in the long term for significant risk reduction, and I would say additional support in the short term. Now, not all franchises are the same. A common concern, I think, is that oh, a franchisor is just going to tell me what to do and they're going to control me. And there are some franchise models that are very, very structured. There are also some franchise models that provide parameters and a lot of wiggle room within. There are some that are very scalable and it's common to own multiple units. There are some where most owners just oversee one business location. There's all kinds of investment ranges. And please, when you do your research, be aware of the statistics. So many, a young franchise, will say with fewer franchise locations, many of the locations before they were franchise model were started and opened by the founder. So the founder may have operated, let's say, 5 locations. Those 5 locations are not owned and operated by 5 different franchisees, but one person. So just be aware of the statistics and how that translates when they convert to a franchise model. In just about every franchise brand, there will be people who are very successful and happy. And there will be people who are not reaching their goals and are disgruntled. Really only worry about your success. In your research, talk to the people that are successful and happy, and talk to the people that are struggling. Get a well-rounded picture, and then ask yourself, when I talk to these different people, what usually happens, oh, I'm starting to see what the successful people do. I'm starting to see what the not so successful people are or are not doing. And where do I see myself? Do I relate to these people? Do I relate to those people? This is information you can get without spending a dime. Just make sure that the franchise you're interested in is a great fit for you. You might have other people saying, what? Other people love to ambush and think that they know. You only worry about you and your success. So you get to get in business for yourself, but not by yourself. So let's talk about finding that business. Remember, I told you earlier that looking for a job is very, very different than looking for a business. So looking for a job is usually very external. There are websites that we can go to that list job openings. We can talk to other people in our network and find out what's open. And we have our resume, which really, we're this huge person, but our resume only reflects this tiny little sliver of who we are. And it basically comes down to our skill and our experience. But you can't say you've got too much experience, right? Because perceived ageism is very, very real. So if we say we've got 40 years of experience, that might actually work against us. So we show our skills and we show our experience to a point, and we hope that they choose us. We don't choose. We hope to get chosen. That's how I see the job search in some ways. Business search, completely different. So what a mistake I see a lot of people making is going online and just kind of looking to see what's out there. But that's what we do for a job. When it comes to a business, we look at ourselves first. Who am I? What do I enjoy doing? I love leadership. I don't know. I hate project management. I don't know. It's going to be different for everybody. Who am I? What do I enjoy? What are some times in my career when I've really been the happiest and the most fulfilled? What are some things in my career where things really didn't work for me, and I really don't want to recreate that in a business? We will give everybody access to this proprietary assessment. I got ahead of myself. I'm going to give everybody access to a proprietary assessment that is going to help you identify those things about yourself, and it directly translates your values and your personality to business. Before, I got a little ahead of myself already, but before is the first thing in finding your perfect fit is really separating the function of the business from the function of the business owner. So this is also a common mistake I see people making when they focus on something where they have industry experience, or they think they need to have a love or a passion for the product or service. So, I mean, I know you guys know this, but success in business ownership is not like, I love sandwiches, so I'm going to buy a deli. One thing that might surprise you about me, I don't love franchising. I'm not passionate about franchising. Franchising does not get me out of bed in the morning. But you know what I do love is I love connecting with people. I love sitting down with people and saying, who are you and what do you want? And how can I help you get there? And maybe owning a franchise is the right vehicle for you. And I want to help you figure that out. Like, that's what I love about what I do. So separate the function of the business from the function of the business owner. Ask yourself what's important to you. These are some common examples. Instead of asking yourself, like with a job, who do I need to be for you to choose me? Ask yourself, what does the business need to provide for me to choose it? Does it need to provide challenge, recognition, building equity for retirement? Is having more flexibility and time with your family and kids a must-have? Maybe your kids are grown and you've got grandkids at this time, and so it's different for everybody. This is the assessment that I told you that everybody could access. And frankly, for those of you on today's call, you've probably taken the DISC profile or Strengths Finder, Myers-Briggs. There's a lot of great assessments out there. This one is specific to entrepreneurship. I'll provide a URL at the end. It takes about 30 minutes to complete. You'll get your results in an 11-page report. I am more than happy to sit down with you one-on-one to look at the results together. I can provide deeper insights into how we might use that information. And frankly, I do a completely different workshop with like the Lake Grove Job Seekers group for people that have no interest in entrepreneurship, but they take this assessment anyway because it helps them. I've literally had people tell me that they copy and paste information from their assessment results into their resume, and it provides insights so that we can speak about ourselves with more confidence and articulation, because you're going to have an 11-page report that tells you all about you as it relates to business. So I really, really encourage you to take advantage of this resource. Here's some screenshots. These are some of the things that the results that it's going to provide for you. If at some point you are interested in exploring, like really starting due diligence on a business, what we would do is we would take your results from your assessment, that 11-page report. And before we look at any businesses out there, remember, we're going to look inward first. And we're going to create, we're going to design this business model. This is an example of what a business model might look like. It is a one-page template or spec, if you will, that says, in a perfect world, this describes the right business for me. This is how I'm going to spend my time and energy. Business owners have a bunch of different roles. They wear a lot of different hats. What role do you want to take on most often? What role do you want to take on least often? This is something that most people just don't ask themselves. What kind of people do I want to be interacting with? Do I want to work with other professionals? Am I comfortable with white collar, blue collar, hourly minimum wage? Do I want B2B or B2C? Do I want to provide leadership or do I want to provide management? So these are things that most people just don't know to ask themselves. I think we are so programmed to be chosen that we don't realize that we get to choose. And then we take this business model. And what I would do is I would look for businesses that have been pre-screened and approved in my inventory, and I would see which, if any, of those businesses fit your template, that fit your ideal. And then I'd coach you through a research process if you want. Even if you're not interested in franchising, but maybe you're looking for an acquisition or to do a startup, I really invite you to design a business model so that you have that template to drive and to make sure that you are in the right direction, moving in the right direction. Think about what transferable skills you want to use. And one thing I'll go back on this because I think skills and core competencies obviously is extremely important. However, just because I'm good at something doesn't necessarily mean I feel called to do it. So I think I'm going to go back here. A big differentiator in this assessment is it sheds significant light on values. And what we have found is that people with certain driving values tend to perform best in certain businesses. And what I love about values is when I align my actions, whether my personal life or my professional life, when I'm in alignment with my values, I tend to be more internally motivated and really more fulfilled by how I'm spending my time and energy. It's not like a salmon swimming upstream. It's going with the flow of who you already are. So yeah, what transferable skills do you want to use? But don't limit yourself to core competencies if they don't call you. Ask yourself, what do I need this business to provide in the short term and in the long term? If you decide to research franchises, an advantage there is if you're saying, hey, let's say in 5 years, my kids are going to be 12 and 16, and this is how much money I'd like to be making in 5 years when they're that age, and this is how much flexibility I want. And then you could call franchisees that have been in the business for 5 years and see what kind of lifestyle they have, and if that aligns with the lifestyle that you seek to have for yourself, if it aligns with your goals and your timeline. So this, I'm eyeing the time here. So we're going to wrap up in like 4 more minutes and we'll open it up to Q&A. The 4-step research process. The first step is to, if we design a business model and I make some specific recommendations, the first step is to talk to someone at the franchisor headquarters, a representative, and they'll give you an overview of the business, the model, the training, the support. They'll probably send you the FDD, that franchise disclosure document. And if you like what you're hearing, then you move on, you call and speak with franchisees. And really, we call that validation, is get enough information. What does a typical day in the life of the owner really look like? And do you see yourself doing that? And actually, let me go back, is because by the end of step 2, we can get to the point where we're about 80 to 90% sure that we've found the right business before we've spent any money. So remember at the beginning where I talked about conducting due diligence and conducting research, exploring your options is not the same thing as making a purchase. This is going to cost time. It's not going to cost any money. If and only if you get to the point where you're about 80 to 90% sure you found the right business, you might visit the franchisor. They often call this Discovery Day, which are now being held virtually, but I'm sure soon they'll be back in person. After you meet with the franchisor, they're usually looking for someone to make a yes or no decision within a week or 2. And if you do decide to move forward, you might want to connect with a franchise attorney to review the franchise agreement. Please use a franchise attorney, not just a general business attorney, but a franchise attorney. I can tell you horror stories. I can give you recommendations. You probably would also want to connect with an accountant. Now, you can do this research totally on your own. You can also work with myself or one of my colleagues at FranNet. The only difference is that we are going to introduce you to pre-screened franchise models, and we're going to be there as another pair of eyes and ears as we conduct this research together. So I have weekly strategy calls with all of my clients. You talked to the franchisor last week. What did you learn? What do you like? What concerns do we have? What do we need to learn next? Do we want to move on? And so we're there just as an advocate for you every step of the way. And some people get through step 1 and they say, no, I'm not interested. This is not the right path for me. Some people go all the way to step 4. Again, I'm not here to convince you that something is right or wrong for you. I'm here to help you access information so that you can decide what's right or wrong for you. Generally speaking, this research process takes about 3 to 4 months. I have certainly seen people do it faster. I've certainly seen people take longer. Again, if you remember those 3 buckets that I talked about earlier, where some people are hitting the brakes, tapping the brakes, and some people are moving on, you might want to ask yourself, I'm kind of fit in this category. And so we will pace your research accordingly. So things to ask yourself throughout your research, if you're moving forward with franchises, am I willing to follow this system? So let me go back. Is it affordable to me? Is the risk level acceptable to me? And will I enjoy this business? So here's some other resources, whether you're thinking about starting a business from scratch, buying an existing business, or starting a franchise. I highly recommend these books. E-Myth Revisited is really, there's a difference between being self-employed and owning a business. So know the difference. Street Smart Franchising is such a phenomenal, I believe in it so strongly, I personally give a copy to all of my clients. So if you'd like to take next steps, I've created a bit link for that assessment. It's called the PFA. It stands for Personal Franchise Assessment. Feel free to jot this down, or I can even include this link in my follow-up email that also has a link to the How to Finance a Business webcast that's happening next week. Also, feel free to contact me directly. I've got an office in Lake Oswego, and I love getting phone calls and just learning about you and seeing how I can be a resource and help you reach your goals. So I am going to stop sharing my screen here, and I'm going to unmute everybody. There we go. Hi. So I'd love I'm just going to open it up to questions, thoughts. How can I be of service to you guys as you're exploring this path? Also, feel free to put anything in the chat box if you'd rather not speak up.
Hey, Emily,
Yeah.
I like the idea of you doing a presentation maybe in May on the assessment. I think
Yes.
the group would find that very interesting
Absolutely.
and helpful regardless of what way they are moving.
Yes.
There are companies still hiring, and we had like, I think 6 people that got hired in March,
Nice.
which I was pleased.
Excellent.
So far, I know of 2 for April.
Yeah.
But there may be more. So
I would be happy.
Have questions you'd like to ask Emily? You did a nice job, Emily.
Thanks, Becky. Thank you.
I thought it was informative. I know I heard you about 2 years ago, but I had, forgotten. And you've done some, I think it's a little bit different presentation than I heard.
Yeah.
2 years ago.
Yeah, there's a lot of things remain unchanged, and yet a lot of things change. So we're always just staying current, trying to bring the most up-to-date information, relevant information. And yeah, I would, Becky, I'll circle back with you one-on-one. I would love to do a workshop on that assessment. I just feel so, I'll tell you, I had a client, he got laid off from Nike. This is many years ago. And he had been in corporate for decades. And he took the assessment, and we spent some time talking through his results. And I'll never forget, he said, "You're reminding me of who I am." And that just meant so much to me, because I think it's common for us to forget who we are, or to allow a corporation or a job to tell us who we are. Yeah. So great. I'm looking at the chat. Okay, so Lindsay, looking forward to taking the assessment. Excellent. The pie chart of franchise dollar investment. Do you have a corresponding? Okay, do I have a corresponding chart for types of franchises and their cost? So John, I saw, so that was a private question. So I will respond to that privately out of respect. Sorry, it took me a second to catch that. You're welcome. Thank you. You should post your email. Okay. I'm going to share. I'm going to share my contact information again. Oh, hold on. Okay, per request, I will share this. High level, I'll respond to one of the questions as it relates to what type of business and the investment range. So this is pretty high level. I would say we fall under a couple of different categories. Now, frankly, let me say this first, is if you guys want to do a Google search, there are franchises out there that cost $5,000 and $10,000. So I'm not able to provide much insight into those. The franchises I'm able to provide insight into are the ones that have a higher barrier to entry. And I don't mean they cost more. What I mean is that there are some franchises out there where if you can write a check, they're going to give you the franchise. The ones that I work with are significantly more selective into whom they award a franchise to. And they are willing, so I'm paid by the franchise industry, and they are willing to compensate someone like me to find them the right person. Okay. So that being said, as it relates to kind of the types of businesses and the investment range, of those that are the ones that I think are high quality, high value, most home-based businesses, most of them you can get into, at least the ones that I work with, under 100K all in. Office-based businesses, we're usually looking at about 100 to 150 all in. For those semi-absentee businesses, those tend to be a higher investment because simply they have more overhead. So we're looking at a location, a lease, maybe some build out. So those tend to start, I would say 200 to 250. I work with individuals in Oregon and Idaho. So I would say the average investment that my clients in Portland and Boise make over the last 5 to 7 years, probably all in about 180. So I hope that's helpful. Okay, I am going to stop sharing my screen to address any more questions. Okay. Well, I have the email addresses for everybody who signed up. I'm a stickler for privacy. So here's what I'm going to do is I'm going to email everybody individually. I will provide a link to the assessment if you want to take it. I will provide a link to next week's educational webinar on how to finance a business. No matter what entrepreneurial path you're thinking of exploring, I highly, highly, highly recommend getting this information. It will be recorded. Also, once I am able to access the link to today's recording, I will include that as well with my contact information. I know you guys, if you're anything like me, like my inbox is so full these days. There's just so much information and things to communicate. And I don't want to send you anything that you don't want or isn't relevant. So I'll send you this email. And then, if you'd like to have a dialogue and we can talk about any other resources or things that might be helpful, I'm here to support you, but I'm definitely not here to overwhelm you. All right.
Thank you so much, Emily.
We
appreciate it.
Thank you guys. Thank you for the kind words. Stay well, be well, take care of yourselves.
You too.
And maybe we'll do this again in May on a different topic.
Yes, sounds wonderful.
Okay.
Thanks, Emily.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.